Hello, and welcome to the Sword and Shield live stream number 3. Today we are going to be streaming making some particle effects in Fusion. Be kind of a continuation of stream number 2, where I started making some smoke particle effects. So today I'm going to try to wrap that up and try to make another effect. I was thinking some sort of motion particles, like, you know, anime rays coming towards you, or like warp drive sort of effect, or maybe some embers to go along with the smoke. I don't know, maybe you guys have some input on that, but I'm gonna go ahead and open Fusion here and start continuing with smoke. Let's see. All right, so excuse me. Where I left off last time is I gotta reorient myself with the node tree, actually. But I had a basic emitter set to bitmap, particle emitter set to bitmap that was masked with a fast noise node to give the illusion of the smoke here. And I think by the end of it, I was pretty happy with the effect I had. I think it's pretty convincing overall. But one thing I wanted to do is add a little bit of turbulence to it, because right now it looks like there's not much resistance going on with it. You see towards the top of the smoke effect here, it just kind of, all of it flows upward and then dissipates. But if this was real smoke, there would be some sort of resistance towards the top and it would billow up more towards the top here. So I think I've been using the steam particles as a kind of a reference, and it looks like they did that by doing a turbulence node here, P turbulence. So I'm going to try the same thing and see what kind of effect I can get by placing a P turbulence node after the P emitter and before my P render node down here. So let's see, let's make everything fit better here. Okay, so let's, that's interesting. It kind of pulses. It's kind of an interesting effect, but not really what we want. So I wonder how they have the P turbulence set. So it looks like the Y and the Z strength are significantly lower than the X strength. And then the strength of the turbulence goes down over the life of the particles. So I'm gonna see okay. So if we, let's look at this in 3 dimensions, see what we're looking at here. So the Z strength for the turbulence will make it have a little bit more depth, which is cool. Definitely want that. Maybe I'll reduce the X and Y. Okay, let's look at these side by side. So this is the final render on the right, and then this is the 3D view for the particles on the left. That does make it thicker, like it looks like it billows more, which is nice. I do not get why it's pulsing like that. Maybe it has to do with the strength over life. And the density. I think this is just, it needs to be a mild effect. That's nice, actually. It adds a little bit of randomization. Wonder if I smoothed out the curve here. Now if I did the opposite, what if I made the strength increase as it gets to the top? know about that. I don't think it makes sense to have more turbulence as the smoke gets to hotter, thinner air. Doesn't really make much sense. This is pretty nice though, actually. I like how the turbulence seems to randomize it a bit more. And if I want it to be thicker, I just give it more depth with the Z strength. I'm gonna go back to my emitter and see if I can adjust some settings here that will help sell the effect more. Let's see. So the angle is 90 degrees going straight up. I think what I really want to see is the size over life. Size variance, you can really really change it up. No, that is too weird. I really want it to look like a continuous smoke stream coming from the bottom of the frame. Not really you don't want to see where the particles come from. It's got to look like a... It still looks a bit too uniform, and I'm not entirely pleased with whatever that pulsing is going on there. Kind of weird. I think maybe if I turn down the strength. See, if I disable turbulence, there's no pulsing. When I re-enable it, P-turbulence, does this... Like the particles grow and then shrink. It's kind of weird. Maybe it has to do... That's even worse. Huh. That's really strange. I also see some of my... Like right there. The smoke particle is cut off at the edge. I think that has to do with the fast noise. Is it the scale of it, maybe? No. You don't want to turn that too high up. Whoa, no. So this mask is just a brightness contrast to give. I didn't even change any settings on this. But with it, you can very clearly see the borders of the fast noise and what's going on there. I don't really know why. Okay, let's go back to normal here. It's almost unnoticeable in the center. It's just the edge. The edges, you can really see that they're blocks. Change the pixel aspects, that seems to conceal that problem, but then it doesn't really look how I want it anymore. So auto resolution seems to make it worse. Okay. Wow, I don't get that. Like, why? Really weird. Okay. I'll have to do some research on that and see, maybe off stream, and figure out what's going on, because it's, as it is right now, it's not too bad. It's just at the very edges there's a few blotches of smoke that look like they're cut off, like right here. You may not even be able to see that on the stream, as I pointed out, but project resolution and project settings. let's see. So the composition is 720p, and I believe the project is as well. Yeah, 720p, 24 frames per second. Monitoring, I don't think that would impact it. I'll just change everything to be the same. It's odd too because it shows up outside of the project window here, or the rendered window here. In the 3D view, they're cut off even. So it's like it's the resolution of the fast noise itself which is causing the problem. And when I make it larger, seems like 100 by 100 is the closest it gets until maybe I adjust the pixel aspect here and it kind of shifts everything in. But I don't think that's perfect even. Actually, no, because on the top, I gotta adjust the Y up. That might be it. It might just be the pixel aspect. There's parts of it that are cut off here, though. Just don't know how far I have to bring it in. And totally changed the look of the smoke, which is kind of a bummer, but looks like there's no more cutoff. Oh, I say that. Yeah, you know, here we're always fighting the Pokemon SEO at Sword and Shield Studio. What can you do, though? But if you want to stick around and learn about DaVinci Resolve Fusion, that's what we're doing here. Making some smoke particles. Yeah, so I really think doesn't matter what color depth I set, what color space I set. It seems like it gets better when I adjust the pixel aspect. Like maybe if I just bump this up extremely. No, not really actually. It gets worse at the top. I think that's something like I said, is something I'll have to research off stream. Not much I could do about it right now without knowing what to look for. Right now it only affects the edge of the smoke. But I think this is looking pretty good. I'm gonna take my brightness contrast though and see if I can introduce a little bit of contrast between the top and the bottom. I've got a rectangle here. I'll bring it down to the bottom. Rectangle mask here. I'll soften the edge quite a bit. Bring down the brightness. Maybe the gamma actually. And the lift. Doesn't really seem to do a whole lot for me, especially since I already have a gradient for the particle emitter that changes the color over the life of the particle system. So maybe I'll just make the start of that a bit darker instead of doing brightness contrast. The only reason I do the brightness contrast is because that's how they do it in the preset steam particles. They have the fast noise piped into brightness contrast node, and then they bump down the gain and then had it masked at the bottom just to introduce a little bit of contrast. But for me, I think, especially since I'm having that weird issue with the fast noise, I'm just gonna make it a bit darker on the bottom, introduce my own contrast with the particles. Maybe it's a bit too dark. It's still probably a bit too dark. I don't know, maybe I had it in a good spot before. That turbulence really does make it look more convincing, but it's causing some weird pulsing. It happens if I just get rid of the X and Y strength altogether. Just have Z turbulence. It doesn't really do much. I'm not a fan of the little random tendrils of smoke I get around the edges. These bits here kind of seem funky. Okay. What happens if I bump up the density a lot? Does not look good. Don't bump up the density a lot. Well, okay. Yeah, because without the turbulence, it's smooth. There's no pulsing at all, so that's definitely what's causing it. Region. The smoke looked like Satan. Yeah, with this fast noise, you get some really wild shapes in there. Hmm. It's this part here that's kind of odd. See, it kind of like pulses. I'm wondering if there's a way. Yeah, just the start point. That does seem to make it better. Oh, is it right here where you saw Satan? It looks like a alien or something. It's going kind of fast. I think that's actually playing in real time though. It's not bad. I think what that pulsing is, yeah, it's back when I go like below 2 with the start. I think it's just multiple particles. Okay. Yeah, it's like when I do multiple particles, or I think that pulsing is when multiple particles are appearing in the same spot with similar characteristics. Because right now, well, okay, so I'm pretty happy with that. I think I'm gonna hold shift and knock the turbulence out of the node tree here. I'm gonna experiment with the P vortex node that I have. Now this is, if you don't know what P vortex is, it's a node that gives you this area of influence that affects the whole particle emitter. And you can set the strength and power of it, and basically the higher the one of the two is the actual power of the vortex, which in this case is a sphere, and the other is the influence of the sphere on the particle system. So I believe looking at it from this angle is where the viewer actually has it. But if you move the it's kind of tricky to work with something so oblong actually, but you see it kind of curves around the circle a bit. See what happens if I play it. Get rid of my media pool. If I increase the strength, well, that's the power. That's kind of weird. It pulls. Looks like it's getting sucked into a vacuum because the power of the vortex. Don't really want that. That doesn't look so bad. I wish it was a bit stronger. Wish the smoke was a bit stronger, but I think I can just adjust the position of the vortex so I can go higher in the frame. That's kind of cool. It looks like it spins. I'm getting more of those artifacts here. But it kind of billows up and spins at the top, which is what I was looking for. Maybe I'll just adjust the size over life. Let's see. No. Do I want it to begin at a greater size? Ah. I will just make the lifespan longer. That should give me a more powerful smoke cloud here. Well, it looks pretty good. I think I'm pretty satisfied with this for now. There's always more tweaking you can do to these things, and I will figure out a solution to the clipping of that fast noise, because that's really a challenge. You don't want that. When you look inside of the, I'm gonna hook up the template for Steam. Hook that up to my media out. The example does not have that issue. Oh, I could really use a background node, as you can see. But yeah, there's no clipping in the Steam, default Steam. It looks rather nice, pretty uniform. And the settings, pretty much the same as what I did. Fast noise, put into brightness contrast with a rectangle mask, the P emitter, turbulence, and then rendered out. So I think I'll just have to look more into the differences of that and see what's causing it. But for now, I think I'm gonna move on to a different particle effects. Is there any particular particle effects you want to explore? Let me know. Otherwise, I think I was gonna either do like a like a warp drive, you know, fast moving stars, like the old school Windows stars screensaver, something like that. I thought that would be a fun one to do. Or I did create some ember particles in the past for another project, so I might explore experimenting with that and see if I can make it look more realistic, add some variation to it. Kind of would go well. Bubbles. That's a good one. Let's see. There is a bubble. There's two bubbles particle presets we can look at and see if we can disassemble it and try to make it better. Okay. So this is the regular bubbles that comes with Fusion. Whoa. Again, I'm going to put a background node so we can see what's going on here. Okay. Well, those are bubbles. Like, seems like they come and go really fast. I'm guessing. So what's going on here exactly? Wow. Alright, I'm gonna copy this over to a fresh node tree. Make a new fusion composition. Make this one 20 seconds. I'm just working in 24 FPS 720p, so it's easy to run. My CPU is not up to snuff anymore. Okay. So, we got our background. Okay, so there's double ellipse mask that runs into the background node. So this is like the individual bubble. So that's how they did that. They masked it out. So I think that's a good way to do it. What's this? Oh. And I got a brightness contrast node that adds some shading to it. So that's how they did the individual bubble, and then they hooked that up to a P emitter, which is pretty, comes and goes pretty quick. Oh, that's neat. So there's, oh, okay, they're just smaller bubbles in there. Let's play that back. So it's like one burst of bubbles, like if you were going underwater. And or you jumped in a pool, you saw the bubbles come up. It's actually two brightness contrast nodes. Interesting. P spawn. What does P spawn do? I gotta look at the manual. I've never actually worked with particles too much. Mostly have done typography, animation, or motion graphics. some 3D stuff, like I use Blender and do some things within Blender, but particles are something relatively new to me, so that's why I'm doing these streams and kind of exploring it so I can ultimately do tutorials on it. Ba ba ba. Okay, so pspawn or PSP makes each affected particle act as an emitter that can produce one or more particles of its own. The original particle continues until the end of its own lifespan, and each of the particles it emits becomes wholly independent with the lifespan. Okay, so each particle then becomes its own emitter. So I imagine that's how they got the effect with all the small bubbles. If we disable that. Yeah, if you disable pspawn, it's a pretty simple looking effect with some size variance, a little bit of angle variance there, and then each of them produces a bunch of tiny bubbles. That's a pretty cool way to do it. And this is a turbulence node, p-turbulence node for the big bubbles. Let's see what that looks like without. Okay, so it just kind of causes the big bubbles to scatter out more, and I imagine if we disable the tiny and re-enable, it's going to be the same thing. Introduce some extra randomness. Now pflock. What does that do? Pflock see what the 3,200 page manual for DaVinci Resolve says about it. Okay, so flocking is a mechanism that can be used to simulate the behavior of organic systems, such as a flock of birds or a colony of ants. Its use can make an otherwise mindless particle system appear to be motivated or acting under the direction of intelligence. Interesting. The pflock node works through two basic principles. Each particle attempts to stay close to other particles, and each particle attempts to maintain a minimum distance from other particles. So I imagine that's going to have a huge effect on this, because there's so many different particles. So without it, I'm actually going to put the final render. I think that's the final render. Why isn't that? Merge 3D. I need to render 3D. And then hook it up to the media out. And then put a background behind that. Okay. They probably need to add a camera 3D here. Not to the renderer. Just pointing a camera at it. Let's see. Okay. Oh, did my Resolve crash? Yes, it did. Let me pull that up real quick. That's the exciting part of working with particles, is you never know when Resolve's gonna crash on you. I think generally is some more stable experience than working with more complicated things in After Effects from my past experience with that software, but it's still not perfect. No software is, though. Okay. Let's see if this is gonna... Alright, we're back. Back in Resolve. Okay. One of these is the bubbles. Yeah, it only lost my render 3D and the background node. And the camera 3D. Oops. Oh, odd. Oh. What the heck? That's odd. Let's see how that looks. It needs to go a bit higher. Okay, doing lots of saves now. Nope. I was doing the exact same thing and Resolve crashed again. So I think, I don't know, it's cool to look at this example, and I think I'm going to use a similar strategy to make the actual bubbles themselves similar to how they made them, but instead of doing a one big splash of bubbles, I'm going to have like a stream of underwater bubbles come up, like a consistent stream of them was released from the bottom of the, underneath something at the bottom of the water. All right, we are back again, and hopefully we will stay back. I'm gonna make a new composition, and I'm going to make it 30 seconds 24 frames per second. And I am going to bring in our template again. I'm going to take what they made and modify it a little bit. These first couple nodes here. Just gonna yoink them. All right. So that's a pretty good bubble, but I want to have like a kind of a more dynamic looking reflection on that. So I think what I'll need to do is bring in another background node. Maybe I'll just, oops. This is kind of weird how they have it laid out. Like that's the shine. That's the bubble itself. But I would like so for a more dynamic shine, I'm gonna create another brightness contrast. I'm going to, instead of a rectangle, I'll mask it with a polyline. And draw something that kind of matches the curvature. I need another point. Yuck. Okay. Don't need another point. I just need to position these better. Probably look better if I soften it. Got a little bit extra shine there. Maybe it's a little cartoony. I don't know. But I don't mind that. The original effect, to be fair, is a little cartoony, so... Let's add another polygon. Not on the same spot, although it might be cool to increase the intensity of that one. Don't want to go too hard with it because would like for it to still blend well. Maybe just a small one at the bottom here. Let's neaten this up. All right. Match that with the bottom. Maybe bump up the gain a little bit and the lift. I gotta make that soft. Cool. That's a little more three-dimensional, I would say. Kind of want to rotate it. Yeah. Alright, so you got the main light source coming from the top here, and then maybe there's a little reflection of something else at the bottom. Alright. So I don't need this merge. And how did they do it? They put it in, all of that into a P emitter. Odd. Did they just load it right into a P emitter? I'm missing something. The brightness, contrast. Yeah. The rectangle. Now why were they able to do that and I am not? Ah, because I need to set it as a bitmap, of course. Yeah, when you set it to bitmap, then it gives you the input. And what else we got? P-spawn. I'll worry about the basic emitter first. You gotta put it into a P render because every P emitter needs a P render node. Yeah. I always forget to do that. Okay. Render 3D. Sorry, merge. Okay, so let's see. It's a big ball of bubbles right now. Exactly what we wanted. Odd. Okay. Why am I unable to see it? Well, Already I think the individual bubbles look a bit nicer. A bit confused why I can't see it in the merge 3D. Do not know. Okay. This is a good enough preview for now. Really what I need to do is add a little bit of velocity, change the angle to 90. And maybe decrease the number of them. And we're gonna make it so a bubble does not really change size over time very much, but it would, like the example, have smaller bubbles appear. So let's start out with some bigger bubbles here. I still have too many. Maybe 0.6. Whoop. Don't want them popping so fast. No, that's just because they're appearing at the very center of the image. Okay. Maybe if I increase the size of the emitter. Almost. Increase the lifespan a little bit. Maybe decrease the number even more. I kind of want it to be a stream of bubbles coming up, like I said, like if this was a bubbler for, or a air stone in an aquarium, kind of like that effect. So in order to do that, I gotta change it from a sphere to a cube. Okay. Still probably too many to start out with, so I'll go down to 0.1. That's pretty good. I like that as a starting point. And we can always mask these out at the top and have them fade out if we don't want them to go all the way up the screen. P-spawn is next. So interesting. I think is I gotta feed the brightness contrast into that as well. Odd. How do we got it over here? P emitter just goes into it. Yeah. It's kind of the same. Okay. What does it look like? Interesting. What if we make this a little bluer? Does that actually impact the original bubbles? No. It does not. So it maybe it's really weird. It doesn't seem like it's adding. I guess there are some extra bubbles there. Seems kind of underwhelming compared to the effect in the example. Yeah, add a little bit of angle variance. And some velocity variance. Some lifespan variance. And just vary things. I'm going to put all of this in front of a oceany water background just to give some perspective here. Make it a gradient. it really deep blue. Have that come from the top. And maybe instead of this being pitch black, I'll just make it a really, really deep. Okay. So it does start to look like it's coming from the bottom there. I think when we do P-flock, things will shape up better. So I'm gonna add P-flock. Oh, it's taking a while to render. Oh, this is P-render here. Ah. What is the P-flock settings? So follow strength, attract strength, repel strength, space, and random seed. So there's a lot of just not getting it quite enough variation. I feel like I'm missing something. It's like they didn't change anything in the P-spawn. It was the turbulence. I ran into two turbulences, big bubble and tiny. Okay. So that's probably what I'm missing here. Whoops, not turbulent noise. P turbulence. Okay, that certainly changes things. Don't really want a whole lot of turbulence, so since I'm going for a stream of bubbles, just want a little bit to introduce some randomness. And it's like I'm setting none at all almost. Completely convincing. Completely convincing. I think it's because the X strength is too high. I wonder if I just turn up the number on my original. Disable turbulence for a sec. Boy, computer's really struggling with this. Why are we struggling? Usually just one particle system's not a huge deal. Let's try removing flock and turbulence for now. In fact, the example for the bubbles didn't seem to have any issues. I think, yes, fusion crashed. Okay. 1 second, I'm gonna pull it right back up. Yeah, I don't want to copy exactly what they're doing. I just think it's a good way to do it by having variation with the, using the P flock and P turbulence. Good way to get some randomization with the bubbles, number one. And number two, get smaller bubbles along with the larger ones. And what did we lose? Oh, not too much actually. I'm pull it up again. And immediately it crashed. Don't know why I'm having issues this evening. I feel like it's something in specific that's causing the problem. I might try taking out the background node at the very end. Try removing the flock and the turbulence and see if I can get it to work that way. Yeah, I need a new... My CPU is 5 or 6 years old now. I mean, it's been going strong. It was a great CPU at the time. i7 4790K. But I think I need more cores and threads for something like Fusion. My GPU is great, though. That is up to the task for sure. Okay, back in Fusion now. Let's try not to crash it. I'm gonna take out the background node. And, oh, the merge 3D is not even... Is that the problem I was having all along? Boy, sometimes it's the simple things. Yeah, that could be it. It's been a few months since I updated it, and I know using Resolve 17 there's probably some new optimizations for it every time. Oh really? Like the newer drivers have been causing issues. I don't know if it really makes a difference. I've been using the game ready drivers because I do play games on this PC too. So I don't know if it makes a difference to use the studio optimized drivers or not. But I've always had issues with crashing under certain conditions with Fusion, but I think it was usually just like if I was trying to change the playback resolution. Yeah, I might need to try the studio drivers. I'm sure it doesn't make a huge difference for games, but if it does help out. Okay. Yeah. Maybe after this stream I'll give it a try. Okay, what do we got going on here with our emitter? It looks weird. I feel like something spawn and flock. Ah, it's because the number is very high. No. Size. It looks vastly different from when it closed last. But the good news is there's more smaller bubbles happening. I'm gonna push it down underneath again. Okay. That's a bit it's a bit slow, kind of an intense stream. Bump up the velocity a bit. I think I'm gonna make this, since I am gonna flock this and add a bunch of others, put it down to like 0.3. And you can bump up the size a bit. And the region, increase the width so they're a bit separated, and that position variance. Oh, that doesn't really help actually. Angle variance is what I'm looking at. Let's see how that looks. That's a good start. That's a good start actually. Still not the most convincing, but it's a good number of them. I feed it into the P spawn. I think that is what is producing more of those smaller bubbles. If we look at the difference. The turbulence. This I'm a bit split on whether I want to do it or not. I do think it does make it more convincing. Let's see where render 3D. some Z strength to that. I forget I had the size over life, strength over life rather, set tiny. You change that. Whoa. Handles here. Okay, good. We got some good variation in size. We got some good variation in the movement. What happens when I enable flock? What happens when I enable flock is fusion crashes. That's what happens. So that is where we're at. It's odd because I was able to run the preset which has flock enabled just fine. So I don't know if it's some settings that I'm using. Maybe I'll just try copying the exact flock node from the preset bubble effect into mine and adapting it slightly. But I definitely think that's what's causing the problems. Okay, back to fusion. And back to bubbles. I probably lost some progress here. No, well, okay. What am I displaying here? It's media out. Okay. I'm gonna remove flock. And I'm gonna pull in their flock. Black magic flock here. We'll see what this does. Everything's just cranked up a little bit with it, so I really don't think it's gonna make a huge difference, but we shall see. It's not enough going on. I wish there were more smaller bubbles and less bigger bubbles. And they're popping at the top, so I increase the lifespan a little bit. Lifespan up. Okay, great. Some are still popping there. I think I just need to decrease the lifespan variance a bit. Seems like no matter what I do with the... I can put the number in P spawn to 100. Does nothing. So I wonder if that is... Interesting. They kind of like, with the size to velocity, they kind of pulse a bit, which is not a bad effect, really. Wish it was a little more eased, but it does look, that's like more how bubbles would behave. Maybe if I just make it slight, 0.07 maybe. Okay. No, there's too many big ones. Too many big bubbles. You just need to decrease the base size value. And increase the size variance quite a bit. Maybe a little less than that. I do kind of like that pulsing effect. Some of these, the size to velocity. Okay, I think I need to do size over life. Big to small, because some of these bubbles get way too big. It's a little unruly. Little unruly for my tastes. Smooth out that curve. Let's see. I don't really want it to go, for them to get too small though. Looks kind of weird because bubbles don't really change that much size. Maybe just a smidge. If I decrease the width of the emitter, kind of reel in. I do like the pulsing. I think that is bubble-like behavior. It's a bit crowded. I think I had it down at like 1.1 originally. I mean, it's like really subtle, but I think it's the most realistic. It's okay if some of them overlap. I think we're just missing that second turbulence. P turbulence. make it nothing in the beginning. And then have turbulence towards the end of the life. No? Okay, there we go. See how it looks. A lot of small bubbles. Oh, some of them go back down. That's no good. Of course, with the added... It's because these two are counteracting each other. I don't want to exactly copy what we have over here. Big bubbles, less strength over time. Small bubbles equal strength over time. So let's make this equal over time. If I can grab it. That's kind of cool. You get some, whoa. Get some really fast ones. Let me turn down the repel strength on P-flock. No, that's not really what's doing it. It's just the turbulence that's... that's... No. I made it worse. Let's see, so it's probably the Y turbulence that's responsible for that. It's okay if a few of them are going, no, that. There's some of them that just look like they're shooting out of a cannon. And that's no good. Yeah. If I smooth this out. There we go. If I smooth that out and maybe decrease the density, calm down a little bit. That one's a bit fast. It's a more concentrated group of bubbles, which is good till towards the end here. It's a little uncontrolled. What happens if I adjust the age range for this turbulence? That's better. Looks better. I think I want the follow strength to be higher on the flock. I still think there just needs to be more bubbles going on, but I don't know how to do that without making it look completely crowded. And I think the flock, P flock, is the answer. Introduce a little bit of repel strength. Decrease the flock size. Maybe. Yeah, that's twice as many as there were, and I think that looks better already. Just crank up that follow strength, make it a more concentrated burst, bring up the P emitter to 0.3 maybe. Size variance has got to go up, I believe. Whoa. Don't know why it's flashing there all of a sudden. If I go back on the size variance, does it still do it? No? Size Z scale. No, it's not what we want. Now this would look pretty good if these were like bubbles on land. Like if a bubble machine was making them, that would be a pretty convincing effect. But I kind of want it to be a more cohesive thing, like they're all floating to the surface of water. I have them fade out now at the end, which I think looks better. Maybe let them live a bit longer. Yeah, I don't really want the strays going about. What happens if I disable one of the turbulence? That does make it a lot more uniform. It fades a bit too soon, I think. It's like right before it hits the edge. I just want it to fade as it hits the edge. But I'm not going to be too concerned about that right now because yeah, I'll do 0.95 and call it a day on that for now. I think I just need to reduce the strength all around on the second turbulence. Maybe make it 0.025 on everything. Decrease the density. Because I do like the randomness that it adds. I don't want it to be too completely static. Just want it to be, you know, it's like a stream of bubbles coming from a aquarium treasure chest. I do think I will make the emitter itself a bit wider though. I think that'll help spread things without it. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Very good. Now some of the bubbles fade really early, which I would like to avoid. So let's see what I got. Lifespan. Lifespan variance is not set very high. A little bit of position variance. I didn't have any before. And if you want, with this effect, I'm sure if you scaled the width up all the way across, it would look fine. Of course, just have a continuous bubble effects going over your screen. I think, oh my. I think I'm gonna make this just a bit blue. don't think that, oh, I just did an update in the live view. That's too blue. Just want it a little bit. Maybe a bit more than that. Yeah. I might... I'm afraid to do it, but I guess there's no harm in trying. Increase the velocity a bit. This might completely change. Oops. Yeah. Maybe I'll just bump it up just a really little bit, because it does look like it. Maybe a bit more than that. 0.1. It's a lot of micro adjustments, this particle. Okay, I actually like the speed of that better. It looks like there's an actual, you know, there's a gravity force of the water pulling it up. Bubbles are pushing themselves up to the surface. I just felt like they were a little bit too lofty before, which is not what you want. All right. Did they do anything else in this that might help us out in? Interesting. Directional force. What does that do? This node tree is becoming a mess. I bet you directional force. Huh. Odd. Okay. So it's kind of like, maybe I don't need to adjust the velocity in the actual emitter. Like if I had it at 0.063 before, I had the directional force. Oops. Moving upward, maybe at a slight angle. Don't really know if it's gonna work how I want it. It's kind of weird. It pulls in the z-axis. I don't really know if I need it for my particular effects here. So maybe I will increase the velocity to 0.1 and just increase the velocity variance along with it. Reintroduce that randomness. And it looks like it impacted the size. So maybe, not that much. Hmm, 2.5. That looks pretty good. There's always tweaks to be done, though. It's a little too uniformly going up. So I think like a lot of these bubbles following the same path, going exactly up. So I think with the increased velocity, I have to increase turbulence. So we'll see. Now, what happens if I reintroduce this directional force? It seems like it just pushes everything. Maybe it's because of the position of the emitter. Seems like it just pushes everything to the very bottom, which is not ideal. No. For whatever reason, it seems to have a negative impact on this particular composition, which is unfortunate because it seems like a good method to bring some uniformity to the direction of the bubbles. Okay. Don't get why it's flashing. Maybe it's the number variance. I'm gonna go for something crazy here. I'm gonna try to make it a really big number. Like 1. Such a huge number, 1. The number 1, I know. But going to try and decrease the overall size. Let's double it. Let's double it and see what happens. Decrease the size again. I really want it to be more small bubbles than big bubbles. Lots of small ones, very fewer large ones, but a large number of them. I'm gonna just go way up to 5. Go crazy with it. See what happens. I could go down even more in size and up in number. Just one long iterative process. Because of the vast number of particles I'm using now, and the different layers of turbulence and the everything else, it's becoming taxing on my computer. You know what might be good? Put brightness contrast on this whole thing. Well, part of it. Soften it quite a bit. Just increase the brightness. Not the brightness, the gain. Let's re-add a background node here with gradient. Boy, it's really being sluggish. Might have to cache the particle render. Oh, there is a way to adjust. Let's desaturate it a bit. More than that, I guess. That's what I'm talking about. Ocean. Swap the inputs. So what I basically did here is put a mask to kind of match this gradient. That gives the illusion of light hitting the tops of these bubbles where these reflections are. And I think this is a pretty good bubble effect. I don't know if there's much I would change for it other than it looks like my fusion is crashing. So I will check on that really quick here. It's really cool doing these live streams every Sunday night. Get to experiment with different things I usually wouldn't immediately produce for a tutorial on a weekly basis. and then I get to use some of this stuff for more long-term in-depth effects and tutorials and things. Like I'll probably make a compilation of all the particle effects I make, release all the setting files at once on the channel. Okay. Please don't lose much. I think I just... got to the point where I added the background and I didn't switch the inputs yet, so that's why the bubbles are not showing up. Well, I'm gonna need to spend some time and render some of these layers out so I can really fine-tune what's going on here. So I think I'm gonna call it a night for the stream. I think it was a successful stream tonight. We made a lot of good progress. Wrapped up the smoke effects, you know, minus that issue with the fast noise getting clipped off at a certain point. I'd like to do some research and figure out what the heck's going on with that. But that was besides that little issue, I feel like the smoke effect is looking pretty good, and I feel like this bubble effect is shaping up quite nicely too. It's good that there's like these presets in Fusion and Resolve that kind of work as a good template to work off of, and you know, they're not always the best, but you can change them up and improve upon them, and it's a really good learning resource. So thank you for everyone who tuned in and watched the whole time or just stopped by for a little bit. I do these streams every Sunday night at 7 p.m., just the same as this one. And every Friday at 3 p.m. Central Time, I release a new video tutorial for DaVinci Resolve topic on my channel, Sword and Shield Studio, which you're watching now. So if you like my content, like what I'm putting out there, please consider subscribing, because you know, this is really only the beginning, and I hope to do more ambitious long-term projects in the near future, so keep an eye out for that stuff as well. But you know, thanks everyone for tuning in, and I will see you next week. Thanks for watching.